Hi guys, this is Mrs. H Psychology, top tips on how to master the A level in 4 easy steps. So this is really to help students who say, how do I deal with all the content? There's a whole new language to learn in psychology. It's very tough. There's a huge amount to learn, and that seems to be the stumbling block for a lot of students. So this is to help you master it. So let's have a look at what we've got. Okay, how to master it in 4 easy steps. So we've got 1, preparation, 2, ask, 3, repetition, and 4, challenge. I'm going to talk you through these, and hopefully by the end of this you'll have a very good idea of how to tackle this. I should say at this stage there is no reason for you not to be able to access an A star. Okay, it is a lot of material, but if you use the tips and you try them, you will see they help you so much. So you can all access an A star, even if you think you are not very good or you're not very clever. That's irrelevant. I have seen so many students go through, many with learning difficulties, who have accessed fantastic results because they have literally just done what has been asked of them. And that is key. It doesn't matter what your history is in terms of your GCSEs, you can access great marks with this. So let's hope you learn something from this. Okay. So what we're going to do first of all is talk about preparation. Right, the key thing that might be a bit different for you is this preparation is done in advance of your lesson. I'll repeat, it's in advance of your lesson. Okay, and that is really important. Why is that important? Because when you're learning psychology, as I've already mentioned, it's another whole level of language, loads and loads of new terms. And if you pitch up to the lesson and you're not familiar with them, most of them will go over your head. You will not absorb, you will not learn them. If you've done some advanced preparation, you've got some material already, you can scribble on, that will be amazing how much of that information, because you're hearing it again, you've already been exposed to it, you're hearing it again, it is repetition, and that is what will help you learn. So it is really important that you do this in advance. Okay, so what do we need to do? First of all, check the specification. Okay, let me show you ours, for example, and talk about that briefly. So we are, my board is AQA, the board that I teach, AQA, and I'm just giving you an example here with social influence topic. So this is what we get from the board, and you can see that it gives you some information, but it's actually quite difficult for students to interpret. Okay, because we don't know, and actually it's the same for new teachers as well, how much depth to go into. So hopefully you've got a teacher who will do something like this for you. Okay, so a lot of teachers are giving booklets with material, and so for example with my guys I give them a little booklet for conformity and tell them what they're going to cover, and then I break that down into key objectives. So lots of objectives, really putting it into a format which is much more accessible for them. Okay, so, and this can be used like a little revision tick list as well. Okay, so hopefully, I think a lot of teachers are going down that route too. So hopefully you've got some information like that. And what I recommend that you do is with your specification, you take chunks of it, you photocopy it, put it on file dividers and separate and organize your folders into chunks. Okay, so social influence being a topic, and then having the conformity, the obedience, the minority, the social change as separate little subsections within that topic. Okay. Right, okay, then what do we do? We have probably got some a textbook or some sort of resource from your teacher. So you want to read in advance and make some notes, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. For my guys, I also recommend that you find particular YouTube videos. So I've made some, but also there are others out there, and they are well worth having a look at. Let me just tell you what I mean by that. So for example, here are my Mrs. H Psychology ones. We would look at something like that, and that hopefully will be familiar to you. And here you can see Mrs. H Psychology. So I'm just making some new videos, and basically you can just see lots and lots of different things. You can subscribe to it so you can find them much more easily, but a lot of mine are on how to answer particular exam questions. Some of them are on content. I'm making more as I go along. However, there are lots of very good videos out there on different topics. So recommendation is to ask your teacher, because hopefully they will be able to recommend. Some of them are a little bit detailed. Some of them have minor corrections that need making, but there are lots that are really useful. And I would strongly recommend that you use them. And if you've got booklets on topics, you find one of the topics, you listen to a video, as well as reading around the subject, but and do preparation in advance. Okay. Key thing is that you are looking at the information that you're provided with, and you are then going on to make notes, and this is crucial. So how do we make good notes? Okay, well, my preference is that you use mind maps. And students sometimes say to me, oh, I've tried that and it doesn't work. And if you have a good system and you do well in exams, fine, stick with what you're doing. If you don't use mind maps and you don't do very well in exams, then I would strongly recommend that you put away your beliefs about mind maps and you have a go in the way that I'm about to explain. You get some help from a teacher. You should be able to have somebody who can help you do these and look at what you've done, and your teacher should be able to help you with them. So let's have a look at what mind maps should be like. Okay, so your mind maps should have little nodes off for different areas of the topic. I would say that you are trying to minimize the number of words used. You're trying to include all those new key terms that you haven't been familiar with, and you should use colour to try to help you. Let me show you one from one of my students. So this was a student's first draft, and you can see that with key assumptions, this is the psychodynamic approach. Key assumptions, she's put the key assumptions that we're talking about in yellow, highlighted in yellow, which is fantastic, so it's much clearer. And then from each one, she's color-coded key terms. So lots and lots of new key terms, all right? She's also included evaluation here, and so on and so forth. So this is first draft, and I'll show you how to edit that in a moment. But key is getting some of this material already down on a piece of paper. I would recommend that you take, you do not need to restrict your mind map to one piece of paper. So for example, it could be because the evaluation is so key that we put that on the back of this piece of paper, that we keep this for key assumptions, and we put it on an A3. And I would recommend, it's the one time I would say, yes, it's fine for you to use lots of paper. So have a go at your mind map. And I've also put down here, there are other formats. So we also use these A3 templates, a revision sheet, which I will show you here. Okay, so this follows the PEEL format: point, explain, bit of evidence, and evaluate. Okay, so very easy for you to put together if you don't have this, but this helps in terms of writing essays as well. What are the key words that we need that are new? What would they actually mean? So one point is this, what this means is blah, blah, bit of evidence to support it, and then of course, absolutely key is the evaluation, and you could put another column in to link it back to the exam question. So always paying attention to whatever the exam question is. But I've got other videos on how to write essays that you'll see. But you could use this as well as another summary sheet. And some people also recommend using the Cornell technique, which I'll show you. So you might like to use something like this. With Cornell, you divide your paper into 3. Left-hand side really are for any questions that you want to ask before the lesson or during the lesson, whatever. Your notes here and a little brief summary at the bottom. So some people like using this format. Personally, I prefer a mind map or the A3 because I like the structure ready for essays as well, for our, particularly in AS in year 1. Okay, so with this preparation, remember we're talking about making notes and mind maps, revision sheets, whatever. The key thing to remember is this is not the perfect end product. This is ready to be edited. So if I show you the mind map again that I was talking about. Okay, so we know that this is a first draft and we will be able to cut down these keywords a little bit. And I'll show you as we go through what I mean by that. Okay, so the next stage, stage 2, is the ask stage. All right, so this is in the lesson, and this is where you go armed with your notes, armed with your mind map, and you get an opportunity to ask questions of the teacher. You're already aware of the topics, so whatever they tell you is going to be feeding into that awareness. It's a form of rehearsal already, so you're really a step ahead of other students who haven't done this. This is your opportunity to check, okay, I never really got that bit. Can you check this? Can you make sure that I understand this? So you're asking your teacher. You're also checking for any keywords you've got in your mind map, anything that you haven't included, all that detail. Remember, the exam board expects you to have some detailed knowledge. So the percentages, the names of researchers, any information about other research which has validated it or provided reliability. So you can pop that on your mind map or in your notes. Okay, and so you're adding to it, but also equally you are getting rid of some of the information that you may have included, that, you know, definitions that aren't sharp enough, or detail that isn't relevant, and your teacher can advise you that you're not going to be asked on that. Okay, so for example, if we have a look at going back to that mind map. Okay, so one example here, with Freud's theories, this student has said Freud's theories influenced many other psychologists, and they used his work to, what does that say, explore other areas of psychology, for example, Bowlby. Well, on a mind map, we don't want all that other waffle. We don't need it. Literally what we need is influence others, e.g. Bowlby, and perhaps we need a little bit more detail about how. So influence Bowlby in terms of early childhood experiences. Boom, and then we've got that. So that's where the editing comes in. And you are most likely going to remember that. If you've edited it, you will remember it. It's a form of rehearsal already. So with my guys also, I want them to be active in the lesson, and I want them to use these, what we call immediate learning logs, which is basically saying, okay, what have I actually learned from this lesson? So by the end of the lesson, they've written down some things. Let me show you what I mean by that with this. Okay, so they literally have a sheet like this, date, the topic, or the whatever the topic is we're dealing with, what they've learned, so key things. So some will only target 3 things in the lesson, some might have 5, some might have 10, and so on, and that they're just jotting down, this is stuff that I need to remember. They don't have to include it on something like this. They could already have their mind map, and they could know that they're going to remember and highlight certain areas that they need to edit. But whatever you do, you need to be actively learning in the lesson. There's huge amounts to learn. You have to be ready to engage and learn as you go through. So don't sit passively waiting and just thinking you'll learn it at the end of the year. It's too overwhelming for that. Okay, so moving on to step 3. Step 3, absolutely key, is this repetition. And it's at the end of this stage that you will pretty much know about 70% of your material. So what do I mean by the repetition? Repetition, first of all, you're going to be probably given homework, should be given homework. Homework is your chance to repeat. It is part of the learning, and homework should be part of your understanding and learning how to write exam questions, learning how about the content, ensuring that you've understood it. Okay, so your homework task should be geared up to that. I would say obviously your homework is a chance to do that, but also at this point, this is really crucial that you go back to your notes, back to your mind map, and you ensure that you have edited it. If possible, at this stage, you should also be rewriting it. I know that's not always achievable, but really that's your target always. At the end of the day, go back and rewrite your mind map. Okay, certainly by the end of the week, you should have done that, and preferably covered and checked it. What have I learned? And if you have done this correctly, you will know most of that material. You'll certainly have a much better understanding and be able to recall loads of the material in comparison to your old techniques. So it's definitely worth a try. And finally, our last step is the challenge. Again, you're going to have homework. That could be preparing for tests, Could be past exam questions. So go back, have a look at my Mrs. H Psychology, my guys, with the exam questions. You know, have a look at those. Those are telling you how to prepare. But also you will have access to past exam questions. We've got more papers now. We've got sample papers, but we've actually got, we're getting a number of actual exam papers. But even if we haven't, most of the topics have been taught before, and although the focus is slightly different now, your teacher should be able to advise you on that, but actually loads of the content and the type of questions are reusable, particularly things like research methods. You know, they're going to be asking very similar things, but also topics like attachments, social influence, memory and forgetting. You know, we've used those on, especially for AQA, we use those questions for years now. So there are old questions that you should be able to access. And obviously you've got an opportunity with your test to target, right? You should be targeting, what am I after? What grade do I want? You don't have to say it publicly, but privately you should be trying to get that high grade, okay? And you should always be asking with your test, well, why didn't I get that grade? How far off it? Why have I not achieved it? Where am I going wrong? Am I misinterpreting the question? Do I lack content? Do I lack detail? Do I lack exam skill? And there's plenty of resources to help you with that. Okay, so target it. Go out there and get that grade, but find out if you're not on target, find out why. It's really not enough for you to just sit back and wait till the mocks at the end of the summer term or whatever. You want to be achieving it much sooner than that, because as soon as you understand the skill, then you can start to practice that. And obviously you wouldn't achieve, you know, you wouldn't go out to be a, I don't know, county hockey player or England rugby player to get on stage without that rehearsal. Okay, so again, it's just the same. You need to be rehearsing. So hopefully, if you go back to those 4 steps, let's have a look at them again. Our 4 steps: preparation, ask, repetition, and challenge yourself. And hopefully, if you do that, there's really no reason at all why you can't access that A star. And good luck.